Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sarah Yarborough. Sarah Yarborough was born in Portland on June 12, 1975. Shortly after, her parents relocated to Federal Way, a suburb of Seattle, where she grew up with two siblings, forming a strong bond with her youngest brother. From an early age, Sarah demonstrated a keen interest in music and ballet, spending considerable time honing her skills. Her academic prowess earned her a spot in a school program that allowed her to travel to New Zealand twice. As she entered her teenage years, Sarah joined the cheerleading team at her high school, where she developed a large social circle. She was renowned for her kind and compassionate nature, often lending a helping hand to those in need. On Saturday, December 14, 1991, 16-year-old Sarah was supposed to meet her cheerleading team at the school building, where a bus would pick them up for an event. She drove her father's car to the school, but arrived at the wrong time, thinking the bus would arrive at 8 a.m. when it was actually scheduled for 9 a.m. As her friends gradually arrived at the meeting point, they couldn't find Sarah anywhere. Some students noticed her car in the parking lot, but she wasn't inside. Even when the bus arrived, Sarah was still missing. Her friends found this strange, but they had no way to contact her since they didn't have mobile phones at the time. Around the same time, two 12-year-old children were exploring the wooded area behind the tennis courts on the school grounds when they noticed something unusual. A man emerged from behind the bushes, took a breath, and walked away in the opposite direction. Although the children found this odd, they didn't pay much attention and continued walking. A few meters ahead, they stumbled upon a horrifying sight. A young woman lying unresponsive on the ground, who they thought might be dead. The children rushed back home to tell their parents, and one of the children's parents returned to the scene with them. Meanwhile, the other child's father decided to follow the suspicious man they had seen earlier. The child remembered seeing a car that resembled a Chevrolet Nova leaving the area, and since he lived near the school, his father decided to try to locate that car. After a while, he spotted a similar car, but unfortunately, he quickly lost sight of it and was unable to find it again. At the same time, the parents of the other child rushed to the school, where they discovered the young woman lying on the ground, likely dead. They promptly entered the school building and contacted the police. Upon arrival, the officers confirmed the young woman's death. They also quickly identified her as Sarah. The police deduced that the victim had been strangled based on the marks on her neck. Some of her personal belongings, including her jacket, underwear, and socks, were found nearby. However, her purse and car keys were discovered in the school parking lot, leading investigators to suspect that the assailant might have attacked her near her vehicle and then dragged her behind the trees. The body was sent to forensic experts for examination, and the police initiated their search for evidence. As a first step, they interviewed everyone who was in the school premises and its surrounding area. The two boys who discovered Sarah provided a rough description of the man who emerged from behind the bushes near her body. They described him as a tall, approximately 20-year-old man with shoulder-length, reddish hair, wearing a dark coat and black trousers. Soon, the police located another witness, and this is where the story takes a surprising turn. A man out for a run observed a strange scene in the same wooded area. He saw a girl lying next to the bushes, with a man hovering over her. The girl was completely still, and the witness initially thought the couple was engaging in intimate behavior in that spot. However, when he ran back through the area in the opposite direction a few minutes later, both the man and the girl were still there, in the same positions. At no point did he suspect that a serious crime was being committed. The witness, a recent immigrant to the United States from a different cultural background, was uncertain about typical behavior in the country. Despite this, he was able to provide the police with a rough description of the attacker, which matched the accounts given by the children who found Sarah's body. The police interviewed dozens of people who had been near the school, but no other useful information came to light. The medical examiners who performed the autopsy on Sarah's body determined that the cause of death was strangulation. It appeared that the attacker had used his own socks to strangle her. A severe head wound was also found, and experts believed that Sarah had lost consciousness due to this blow, which correlated with the runner's account of seeing her lying motionless on the ground. Forensic experts analyzed Sarah's clothing and discovered traces of male DNA on nearly all her garments. However, at that time, in 1991, there was no DNA database to match these samples against, so investigators had to rely on direct comparisons with DNA samples from specific suspects. Another significant finding was that although forensic experts found male DNA on Sarah's clothing, the forensic doctor reported no signs of sexual assault on her body. Based on this information, investigators pieced together their own theory of what happened. Since Sarah had arrived at the school almost an hour early, and she was alone in the parking lot, it's likely that her attacker saw her, waited for her to leave the car, struck her on the head with an object, causing her to lose consciousness. The attacker then dragged her body behind some trees, where it was later found. The assailant removed some of her clothing, engaged in inappropriate acts, and eventually strangled her using her own socks. When the children who found Sarah's body reported the car they thought the attacker had fled in, detectives started searching for a Chevrolet Nova. They soon found one, but the driver proved to have an alibi. He had just delivered donuts that morning, and his DNA didn't match the DNA on Sarah's clothes. It seemed the kids had simply seen the car driving by and mistakenly assumed the killer was inside. In fact, none of them could recall for certain whether they had seen a man get into a car from the bushes. In the days that followed, police continued to search for witnesses and new leads, but made no significant progress. Despite the horror of the event, classes resumed on Monday. The fact that the murder had occurred just a short distance from their school, and the killer remained at large with no known identity, added to the unease. Afraid to walk alone, the girls were escorted to their cars or buses by the boys from the sports teams, ensuring they weren't left alone on the street. Approximately 70 potential witnesses were present at the school and its surroundings on the morning of the incident. Investigators interviewed each of them, but unfortunately, no new information came to light. Based on the accounts of the two children and the runner, a composite sketch of the attacker was created and circulated to local newspapers and television stations. The case received widespread media attention, and over the next few weeks, the police received hundreds of testimony. Each tip was thoroughly investigated, but in every instance, it led to a dead end. One promising lead involved a man who matched the suspect's description and had a criminal record. However, his DNA did not match the sample found on the victim's clothing, and the lead was eventually ruled out. The case remained stagnant for months, with the police dealing with a staggering 4,000 tips, but lacking the resources to effectively follow up on each one. As new cases emerged monthly, the investigators' attention was increasingly divided, further hindering progress on the case. When Sarah's family learned that the police were struggling to manage the influx of tips, they stepped in to help in any way they could. One family member worked for a tech company and successfully lobbied the company's management to lend the police department a powerful computer worth $150,000 in the 1990s. This generous donation allowed the police to centralize and process the leads more efficiently, categorizing them for easy review. Despite their best efforts, however, every lead ultimately led to a dead end, and the case remained stagnant for years to come. 2 years later, Sarah's classmates prepared to graduate, and as a tribute to their friend, they raised a substantial amount of money to create a memorial in her honor. The memorial took the form of a bench featuring a metal casting of Sarah's belongings alongside a poignant photo of her dog reaching for her purse. Although the case was periodically reopened and re-examined in the years that followed, the outcome remained the same. The perpetrator remained at large. During this time, the police conducted thousands of interviews and collected DNA samples from nearly 300 potential suspects, but all these efforts ultimately proved fruitless. In 2011, 20 years after the murder, a detective decided to utilize modern technology to aid in the investigation. He contacted a genetic genealogy company, inquiring if they could help locate relatives of the individual who left DNA on the victim's body. The experts accepted the challenge, but unfortunately, they were unsuccessful. Two main factors contributed to their failure. Firstly, genetic genealogy was still in its early stages, and the experts' capabilities were limited. For instance, they couldn't simultaneously search for both male and female relatives from the same DNA sample. If the DNA was from a male, they could only search for male familial connections, and vice versa. Secondly, legal obstacles hindered their progress, as various laws prohibited the use of genetic data samples to search for relatives of suspects. The researchers the detective approached had spent years tracing the genetic family tree of the British passengers who arrived in the United States on the Mayflower in 1620. By analyzing the DNA of Sarah's attacker, they found a link to one of the ship's passengers, Robert Fuller. However, tracking the attacker's lineage proved extremely difficult, especially considering the passage of time. Although the Mayflower had only around 100 passengers, their descendants now number over 25 million. Despite the initial setback, this was the first time genetic genealogy had been used to solve a crime. The detective gathered available information and identified several local residents with the surname Fuller. He showed them pictures of the men, but none were recognized by the witnesses, including a runner and two men who had stumbled upon the body as children. Next, the detective collected DNA samples from all the local Fullers and sent them to the lab. Although none of the samples matched the attacker's DNA, one surprising discovery emerged. One of the men was a distant descendant of Robert Fuller from the Mayflower. However, he was not the killer and had no knowledge of any distant relatives living nearby. The detective retired in 2017, and a new team of investigators took over the case. In 2011, a company had taken over the study of the DNA sample from the assailant, and the new team reached out to them. Given the significant advancements in genetic material study capabilities, the experts agreed to try to trace the assailant's lineage. Over the next 2 years, they painstakingly worked through public databases to find even the most distant relatives of the assailant, then manually traced their family connections to individuals who lived during the time of Sarah's death. After eliminating several thousand individuals, they finally got a break in September 2019. They identified two new potential suspects, brothers Edward and Patrick Nicholas, who were descendants of Robert Fuller. The experts concluded that it was highly probable that a DNA sample found on Sarah's clothing belonged to one of the brothers at the time of the murder. The older brother, Edward, was a career criminal with a long history of violent offenses, and his DNA profile was already in the FBI database, ruling him out as a suspect in Sarah's murder. The younger brother, Patrick Nicholas, had also been arrested multiple times for violent crimes, but his DNA sample was not in the database because it was collected before the DNA profiles of offenders were added. The detectives put 55-year-old Patrick under surveillance right away. 2 days later, they got their chance. Patrick went to the laundromat, and while waiting for his clothes to wash, he stepped outside to smoke a cigarette. When he was done, he carelessly threw the butt on the ground. One of the officers quickly picked it up and put it in an evidence bag, then returned to his car. Patrick repeated this process, stepping outside to smoke again, and this time a cloth handkerchief accidentally fell out of his pocket. The police thought it wise to take this second piece of evidence, just in case they couldn't get a DNA sample from the cigarette butt. As it turned out, the forensic experts had no problem obtaining samples from both items. The next day, they had the long-awaited news for the detective. Patrick's DNA matched the traces found on Sarah's clothing back in 1991 perfectly. The judge immediately issued a warrant for Patrick's arrest, and the police took him into custody. It took investigators 5 days to identify the suspect and formally charge him with murder. Once his biography was made public, an obvious question arose. Why had a man with such a criminal history not been considered a suspect for 28 years? Patrick Nicholas, at 19, had attempted to assault a young woman who managed to escape by jumping into a river and swimming to safety. He was later arrested and spent 4 years in prison. In 1994, he was arrested again for trying to assault a minor, but his DNA was not recorded in any database because the charge was not serious enough. Over the next 3 decades, his name never surfaced during investigations, and he didn't appear in over 4,000 leads. It was eventually revealed that genetic genealogy experts couldn't trace him back to Robert Fuller because Patrick was adopted and grew up with a different surname. One of the men who discovered Sarah's body when they were children in 1991 immediately asserted that Patrick was undoubtedly the same killer. He admitted that the incident had deeply affected him, as he was only 12 years old when the body was discovered, and the perpetrator had seen his face for many years. The witness lived in constant fear that the killer would come after him, and only after Patrick's arrest did he finally feel safe. Patrick's trial did not start until 2023. Despite claiming innocence, the main piece of evidence, his DNA on the victim's clothing, was a major obstacle. His lawyer attempted to argue that the presence of Patrick's DNA did not necessarily mean he was guilty, but this claim was dismissed. The lawyer also questioned the accuracy of the DNA analysis, but experts deemed this entirely unreliable. In the end, Patrick was found guilty of first-degree murder without premeditation on May 25th. He received a prison sentence of 45 years and 8 months, effectively ensuring he would never be released. At the sentencing, Patrick remained emotionless, in contrast to Sarah's family, who thanked the judge, trial participants, and investigators for bringing the killer to justice after 28 years of evasion. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Rosana Gallano. Rosana Gallano was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in the late 1970s. She was the youngest child, with 2 older brothers, Oscar and Gustavo, and a sister, Monica. Her parents were Raldo and Graciela. While details of her childhood and teenage years are scarce, it's known that she finished high school in the late 1990s. During this time, her father, Raldo, worked as a mechanic. In early 2001, Jose Arce visited Raldo's workshop, where he met Rosana. Born on November 22, 1948, Jose had spent over 30 years living abroad, including time in Greece and the United States, where he was imprisoned for 4 years for drug trafficking. He returned to Argentina in 1996, owning 8 properties in a posh area of Buenos Aires. Jose and Rosana started dating quickly after meeting at her father's shop, where he brought his vintage car for repairs. Despite their significant age difference, Jose appeared financially stable, thanks to his mother Elsa, who still lived in the United States. When 52-year-old Jose proposed to 22-year-old Rosana, her mother Graciela expressed concerns about their age difference. Jose argued that age was not an obstacle to love, and Graciela turned to Rosana for reassurance. Rosana confirmed her desire to marry him in a whisper. The couple got married on November 17, 2001, just 7 months after meeting. Jose attributed his cheerful, modern, and smart personality to winning Rosana over. They soon had a son named Gono, but problems began to emerge soon after. Jose was a controlling and jealous partner who frequently belittled Rosana and her family. The emotional abuse escalated into physical violence, leaving Rosana feeling trapped and terrified. Jose's intimidating presence, reinforced by his possession of 2 guns, allowed him to maintain control, a situation that Rosana's family was painfully aware of. He would often flaunt his guns when they had visitors, or when he visited others. On one occasion, Rosana's brother Oscar witnessed Jose physically assaulting her while they were painting their house, telling her to shut up before hitting her. Another time, Rosana's father noticed bruises on her back, and she revealed that Jose had dragged her across the pavement. Despite these challenges, Rosana and Jose had their second child, and Rosana tried to make the relationship work, hoping to provide a stable home for their children. However, her efforts were consistently thwarted by Jose's temper and disrespectful behavior. Moreover, Jose's mother Elsa exerted control over their household from a distance, making decisions about their lives during her brief visits to Argentina. By 2006, Rosana had reached her breaking point after enduring years of unbearable abuse, and she finally found the courage to report Jose for domestic violence. Her family, however, remained largely oblivious to the full extent of her suffering. Months later, Rosana filed a second complaint, which included a request for a medical examination to document her injuries. It was then that she confided in her sister Monica, and the two made a pact to stay in close contact, reaching out to each other whenever something happened. Monica became Rosana's safe haven and primary source of support, providing a refuge from the unbearable realities of life with Jose. Rosana would often visit Monica's apartment with her children, though Jose would dictate when they had to return, frequently backing up his demands with death threats. Rosana made the difficult decision to move in with Monica and the children, leaving Jose to stay in his own home. After a period of time, Rosana took further action by filing another complaint and seeking a divorce, which resulted in a restraining order being issued against Jose. From then on, the only times they met were during child visitation sessions at a neutral location in El Romanzo Exal de la Cruz, as arranged by the court. Rosana confided in her neighbor, Daniel Gonzalez, a married father of one who worked as a gardener. Rumors began to circulate about a possible romantic relationship between Rosana and Daniel, although this was never confirmed. Meanwhile, Jose's threats persisted, and Rosana shared a chilling voicemail with her brother Oscar, in which Jose casually spoke about killing her in mid-2007 while socializing with friends at a bar. Rosana met Oscar Lugo, a 32-year-old man from Marino who worked in a sewing workshop. They quickly became close, exchanging phone numbers and starting a romantic relationship. Oscar was an old-fashioned gentleman who treated Rosana with kindness, attention, and listened to her, which was a welcome change after all the turmoil she had faced. By December 2007, Oscar had become a part of Rosana's holiday celebrations, even dressing up as Santa Claus to delight her two sons. However, their happiness was threatened by Jose, who was keeping a close eye on Rosana's every move and was aware of her new relationship. The looming divorce had panicked him. Jose tried to persuade Rosana to end things with Oscar by offering her a truck, but she refused. When Rosana had a severe nervous breakdown, it was Oscar who accompanied her to the hospital, not Jose. Running out of options, Jose, with the help of his mother Elsa, concocted a plan to hire a hitman whose identity remains unknown. On January 16, 2008, Rosana and her sister Monica went to El Rano to pick up her sons, aged 4 and 3. However, Jose delayed the handover, making excuses. At 9:15 p.m., Jose called Rosana, claiming that Geronimo had a fever and that he would take him to the hospital and return him the next day. But Rosana insisted on taking care of Geronimo herself and asked for the children to be returned. The call was brief, and Rosana then went back inside. Around 10 p.m., Rosana sent Oscar Lugo a casual text about their plans for the next day. Later, at 10:50 p.m., Rosana and Monica sat down for dinner when Jose called again, unleashing a deadly trap. Rosana stepped out into the garden to improve the reception, but a shadowy figure emerged from behind the trees and shot her 4 times with a .45 caliber gun. Monica, hearing the shots, screamed as Rosana staggered and fell. Panicked, Monica tried calling 911, but the call wouldn't go through. She then asked her boyfriend to alert the police. Meanwhile, Oscar Lugo, oblivious to the events, attempted to contact Rosana at 11 p.m., but got no response. He then tried to reach Monica, but she didn't answer. The police investigation revealed that the shooter had entered from an adjacent vacant lot. A witness reported seeing someone fleeing through a gap in the fence, but couldn't provide a clear description due to the darkness. Jose was left stunned after being questioned and subsequently requested a lawyer to take over the proceedings before departing the following day. Meanwhile, a red sweater was discovered during further searches, which Rosana's relatives identified as belonging to Jose, solidifying his position as the prime suspect in their minds. The case garnered widespread media attention, sending shockwaves throughout the country and sparking a scandal as Jose and his mother publicly proclaimed his innocence, while also making disparaging remarks about Rosana and suggesting that her multiple lovers should be investigated instead. After the incident, Daniel the gardener became reclusive, shunning all human contact. On the night of Rosana's funeral, Raldo observed Jose lurking in the distance, watching from his truck without offering condolences or joining the mourners. Jose's defense strategy later focused on discrediting Monica, Rosana's sister, and the sole witness by raising questions about her behavior, such as why her clothes bore no blood stains and why she had prioritized calling for help over assisting her sister. However, this theory lacked credibility, and the investigators countered that the murder weapon was too heavy for a woman to wield. The detectives also highlighted a crucial point. Anyone familiar with the house would know that Rosana had to venture outside to get a cell signal, suggesting a high degree of premeditation in the crime. During the investigation, Rosana's sons were cared for by their father and grandmother Elsa, while their grandmother Graciela was granted limited access. In contrast, Monica and Oscar were denied access, with Jose citing safety concerns for his sons, despite the legal restrictions. The children longed to see their Aunt Monica, prompting Jose to occasionally allow supervised visits. Monica seized these opportunities to take the children to see a psychologist. Eventually, Graciela successfully obtained visitation rights, although she was denied guardianship. In a contemporaneous interview, Jose claimed that Rosana had 4 lovers, all of whom had criminal records. According to Jose, Rosana engaged in intimate relationships with these men to uncover their secrets, which she then leveraged to blackmail them for personal gain. Meanwhile, following threats, Oscar was placed under police protection as a protected witness in his sister's case, requiring him to wear a tracking bracelet. As 2007 drew to a close, investigators still lacked concrete evidence to bring charges against any of the suspects. However, a significant breakthrough came a year after the murder, when Jose was arrested in January 2008, charged with aggravated homicide due to their romantic relationship, premeditation, and the alleged involvement of multiple perpetrators. 4 years after the attack, Oscar exercised his visitation rights to take his nephews to play soccer, sharing a heartwarming hug with the 6- and 7-year-old boys. In April 2013, the trial commenced. Jose maintained his innocence during the May proceedings, but the trial was delayed when he suffered a stroke, ultimately pushing the final verdict to November 2013. The judges concluded that the murder was meticulously planned, bearing the hallmarks of organized crime. Jose and Elsa were found to have chosen the time and place for the attack, aware that a phone call would lure Rosana outside, rendering her vulnerable. The court determined that financial motives drove the murder, as Jose sought to avoid splitting the marital assets. Jose and Elsa received life imprisonment sentences. The higher court upheld the conviction, citing Jose's threats, the domestic violence endured by Rosana, and the dominant influence of his mother. The actual perpetrators of the shooting were never identified. In 2015, Jose and Elsa were placed under house arrest, with Jose's health and Elsa's age cited as reasons, allowing the children to reunite with them. The media continued to follow the children's story for years, during which Monica and Graciela had no contact with them. The boys were shuffled between homes familiar to their father, but unknown to Rosana's family. In January 2017, the court granted the children a weekend visit with their maternal grandparents for the first time. The Gallano family prepared their home with fresh paint, a thorough cleaning, and decorations, and Graciela cooked their favorite dish. That weekend, the Gallano home was filled with joy as the boys played soccer, video games, and even asked to sleep in their grandmother's bed, whom they hadn't seen in over 2 years. On November 24, 2018, Jose passed away after another stroke. The event was another devastating blow for the children, who attended their father's funeral. During the funeral, they expressed their concerns about their future to their Aunt Monica, who reassured them with calmness and love, promising to support whatever they decided. They chose to live with Monica, who then had to confront Elsa to communicate the boys' decision. Through these and many other instances, it was clear that Monica always prioritized her nephew's wishes, whether they wanted to talk or preferred silence. Monica's primary goal was to provide stability and comfort for the boys. In March 2019, Jono decided against switching schools, opting to stay close to his friends and see out his final 2 years. He returned to live with his grandmother, Elsa. Meanwhile, Monica pursued custody of Nahuan. Things appeared to be settling, but tragedy struck in late November 2019 when 87-year-old Elsa was hospitalized and shortly after, passed away on November 30th. The following month, Monica was awarded custody of Nahuan. By the end of the year, Jono had moved in with a family friend of his grandmother's. Both brothers still required psychological support to cope with their traumatic experiences, with Jono grappling with depression. Their psychologist acknowledged the staggering sequence of events they had endured. In March 2020, Jono's housemate passed away, prompting him to take refuge with his Aunt Monica until October of that year. When he turned 18, Geronimo rented a small apartment and began living independently, supported by the income generated from his inherited properties. Meanwhile, Monica initiated legal proceedings to secure their inheritance, fearing they might be stripped of their assets. Nahuan, on the other hand, demonstrated emotional stability thanks to the support he received, and was encouraged to continue attending therapy as needed. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Shannon Mani. Shannon Mani was born on April 6, 1997, to Anshamani and Vijay Mani. When she was a small child, her parents immigrated to the United States from Fiji. The family settled in Waukesha, a small town in southeastern Wisconsin, where Shannon grew up and attended school. She was intelligent, attractive, and very outgoing. Her parents believed Waukesha was the perfect place to raise their children. After completing high school in 2015, Shannon enrolled at the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. She was passionate about helping others and aspired to become a social worker. Despite her busy schedule, Shannon worked with her father at an organic food company. It was at work that she met Quentin Neal, 26, who was applying for a similar position. Quentin had a strong desire to make a positive impact on people's lives. Shannon shared a similar passion, dreaming of building a shelter for women and children, while Quentin wanted to create a safe haven for his community. With their similar interests and outlook on life, Shannon and Quentin quickly formed a close bond. As their friendship blossomed into romance, Shannon was overjoyed to have met Quentin, and soon they started living together. Quentin showed genuine care for Shannon, and she ensured their relationship remained happy. They began making plans for their future together. However, their lives took a drastic turn when Shannon vanished without a trace. On April 13, 2018, Shannon failed to pick up her younger brother from school and didn't show up to work. Her phone was switched off, and she hadn't informed anyone about her absence from work. Concerned, her parents went to the police station, unable to locate their daughter. Initially, detectives suspected that Shannon, being young, might have run away or gone off with friends. But her parents disagreed, knowing their daughter well. She wasn't the type to simply switch off her phone and abandon her family, leaving them worried and searching for her. Shannon's mother shared crucial details with investigators, prompting them to take the case more seriously. Shannon was 4 months pregnant when she vanished, which raised concerns since pregnant women rarely disappear without something bad happening to them. Furthermore, some of her belongings, including money and important documents, were still in her room, which was another alarming indication. Shannon's parents told investigators that the father of her child was 27-year-old Quentin Neal. However, when Quentin was contacted by phone, he claimed to have no knowledge of Shannon's whereabouts. According to Quentin, Shannon had been living with her parents, and he hadn't seen her at all that day. The investigators called Quentin again, asking him to come to the police station to answer some questions. Quentin appeared anxious, promising to arrive at the station immediately. When Shannon's parents were still present, Quentin told the investigators that the last time he had seen her was over 24 hours ago, when she left his house to pick up her little brother from school. They had only exchanged a few text messages since then, and had not been in contact again. The investigators asked Quentin if he had any idea where Shannon might be, but he was unable to provide one. According to Quentin, Shannon's life revolved around school and work, and she had always been in touch with her loved ones until that day. However, Quentin recalled that there was another guy who had shown interest in Shannon. Despite knowing she was in a relationship and pregnant, this guy had relentlessly pursued Shannon's affection, even after she asked him to leave her alone. The investigators instantly considered this guy a person of possible concern, as jealousy often leads to reckless behavior. The next day, police began questioning Shannon's friends to gather new information. They distributed details of the search for the young pregnant woman to all police stations in Wisconsin the same day. The first disturbing discovery was made. Shannon's car was found in Milwaukee, about 20 minutes from her home. Forensic experts carefully examined the vehicle inside and out, but found no suspicious signs. There was no evidence of carjacking, struggle, or any other crime. However, Shannon's purse and cell phone were missing from the car. 3 sets of fingerprints were found on the vehicle, including Shannon's and Quentin's. The origin of the third set remained unknown, and the police had to identify the person who left them. That same afternoon, the man mentioned by Quentin was questioned by investigators. Although he claimed to be upset about Shannon's disappearance, he denied Quentin's allegations, stating that he and Shannon were just friends and that he had never pursued a romantic relationship with her. When pressed further, he admitted to confessing his love to Shannon in the past, but she had rejected him, saying they could only be friends. Since then, he had not attempted to win her affection. The guy's fingerprints were found to match those in Shannon's car. However, he explained that he often got rides from Shannon to university, which is why his prints were in her car. He also claimed to have been 100 miles away from Waukesha, attending a baseball game when Shannon went missing. The investigators checked and confirmed his alibi, ruling him out as a suspect. The case got a surprising and crucial break when Shannon's mother, Shannon Mani, found her daughter's Apple Watch and checked her recent text messages. She took the watch to the police station, handing it over to investigators. Reviewing Shannon's texts, they made a significant discovery. Despite Quentin's claim that he hadn't met Shannon on the day she vanished, the texts showed they had arranged to meet up that day. This meant Quentin had lied to the investigators and Shannon's parents, making him the prime suspect. While examining Shannon's watch messages, investigators uncovered cracks in her relationship with Quentin. They found texts revealing Quentin's abusive behavior towards the pregnant mother. This revelation shocked Shannon, who had been unaware of her lover's true nature. Quentin apologized profusely, begging her not to leave him. Shannon proposed they take a break from each other. The investigators' suspicions grew, fueled by Quentin's troubled past. He had a criminal record, having recently been released from prison after serving time for robbery. He had multiple arrests for assault and other misdemeanors. Shannon's parents had also grown wary of Quentin, noticing their daughter's persistent depression. Moreover, Quentin exhibited emotional instability regarding the unborn baby, further solidifying the investigators' doubts about his character. After Shannon informed her parents about her pregnancy, they arranged a meeting with Quentin, during which he assured them that he would take care of both Shannon and the baby, claiming he had always wanted to have children. However, a few days later, according to Shannon Mani, Quentin sent Shannon some disturbing texts, contradicting his earlier promise and stating that he didn't want the baby. He even suggested that Shannon should consider having an abortion. The police attempted to track Shannon's cell phone and discovered it was last active in the afternoon of April 13th, near Quentin's residence. Shannon's mother noticed severe bruising on her arms and inquired about the cause. Shannon broke down in tears and revealed that Quentin had physically assaulted her, punching her with his fists while she was in her vehicle. Despite her parents' warnings to end the relationship, Shannon eventually forgave Quentin and resumed dating him. With this concerning information, investigators grew increasingly worried that they might not find Shannon alive, prompting them to obtain a search warrant and rush to Quentin's house. At first, the crime scene did not appear to show any signs of a struggle or disturbance. The area was clean, with no broken furniture or objects. Forensic experts sprayed the first floor with luminol, a chemical that detects blood, but found no evidence. However, when they applied the same test to the basement, the walls and floor glowed, indicating the presence of blood. The numerous marks found at the scene strongly suggested that Shannon was likely no longer alive. Quentin Neal was arrested and taken into custody. Before questioning him, investigators reviewed the contents of his phone and discovered that he had recently searched online for ways to remove evidence of a crime using a lye chemical. This suggested that he was planning to hide traces of his crime. During the interrogation, Quentin initially denied any knowledge of Shannon's whereabouts and claimed to have no connection to her disappearance. However, faced with solid evidence, he began to alter his story. Eventually, he agreed to confess to everything. Quentin claimed to have acted in self-defense when he took Shannon's life. He told investigators that Shannon had visited his house to discuss their future and their child. But the conversation escalated into an argument. According to Quentin, Shannon then entered the kitchen, grabbed a knife and a gun that were being kept for emergencies, and began threatening him. Quentin said he felt compelled to act quickly to protect himself, leading to a physical struggle that ended in Shannon's death. Quentin reiterated to the investigators that he had acted in self-defense, but they were skeptical due to the lack of defensive wounds on his body. Despite their doubts, they continued to listen to his account. Quentin said that, realizing the gravity of his actions, he panicked in the basement where the incident occurred. In an attempt to conceal the evidence, he used a large suitcase to hide the body. Quentin Neal led the police to a storage unit 6 miles from his home, where he had stashed a suitcase containing Shannon's body. When detectives opened the suitcase, they found Shannon's lifeless body, her wrists and ankles bound with duct tape, contradicting Quentin's claim of self-defense. Forensic examination revealed Shannon died from 2 gunshot wounds to the head and had additional knife wounds on her body. Shannon's parents were devastated when detectives informed them of the discovery of their daughter's body on April 18, 2018. Quentin Neal was subsequently indicted for the murders of Shannon Mani and her unborn child. The evidence gathered, including their correspondence from the day of her death, was sufficient for the court to reach a guilty verdict. The dispute had begun when Shannon visited Quentin's home to discuss her pregnancy, but she never left his house alive. The trial of Quentin Neal, accused of killing Shannon, was set to begin in the spring of 2019. However, just days before the trial, anonymous letters were sent to attorneys and court officials, claiming that someone else was responsible for Shannon's death. The letters were later deemed irrelevant after the author, a friend of Quentin's, was identified and found to be trying to confuse the investigation and help Quentin. Quentin faced the death penalty, but denied the charges and claimed he acted in self-defense. 15 months had passed since Shannon's death, and her family waited anxiously for justice, trying to stay positive. Shannon's mother, Shannon Mani, worked hard to keep her daughter's memory alive and not lose hope. Shannon had been passionate about supporting women and children affected by domestic violence, and her family had planned to build a shelter in her honor. However, that dream was never realized, as Shannon herself became a victim of violence. On July 15, 2019, Quentin Neal reached a plea deal with investigators, admitting guilt in the deaths of Shannon and her child. As part of the deal, prosecutors dropped the death penalty. 2 days later, on July 17, 2019, the Milwaukee County Circuit Court sentenced the 28-year-old to 2 concurrent life sentences without parole eligibility, ensuring he will spend the rest of his life in prison. At his sentencing, Neal remained silent, failing to explain his motive for the crime. Shannon's mother, Shannon Mani, expressed relief that justice had been served, noting that the only silver lining was that Neal would no longer harm anyone else. The family plans to keep Shannon's memory alive by opening a shelter in her honor. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michelle Anglin. Michelle Lee Cohen Anglin was born on November 27, 1973, in Fountain Valley, California, but soon her family moved to Arizona, where she grew up with her mother Peggy and stepfather Larry McCall. She also had 2 older sisters, Cindy and Christina. At around 20 years old, Michelle started dating Hudson England, and they gradually fell in love. When Hudson proposed, Michelle accepted without hesitation. In late 1995, the couple got married in the presence of their families and friends, planning a honeymoon and their future together. However, tragedy struck just 4 months after the wedding, changing Michelle's life forever. Michelle's mother, Peggy Cohen McCall, a realtor herself, inspired Michelle to join the industry. According to the Arizona Association of Realtors, there are no mandatory safety measures in place for Arizona realtors. Nevertheless, many builders and agencies provide them with various resources and safety tips to help them stay safe on the job. When Michelle was at the office, her family members, including her husband, sisters, and mother, would typically get in touch with her using her work phone. Whenever she was out showing houses to clients, Michelle would always carry a pager with her so that her family could reach her if needed. However, on February 9, 1996, Michelle failed to respond to her loved one's calls and messages, which was unusual behavior for her. Normally, she would let someone know about her plans to show a house to a potential buyer. The job of a realtor comes with significant risks, often higher than those in other professions. Realtors can be attractive targets for predators because they often work alone and sometimes show properties in remote areas. Experienced realtors are well aware of the dangers associated with this job. Predators may lure them to an isolated location, such as an empty house with no nearby neighbors, under the guise of wanting to buy a property. In reality, they have a different motive. When a realtor finds themselves alone in an empty house with such an individual, the situation can quickly turn bad. To avoid potential risks, realtors are cautioned to maintain a safe distance from clients, stay near the front door, and leave immediately if they sense anything unusual. This is why Michelle's family became worried when they couldn't reach her during the day. Michelle's sister, Cindy, was dating a Phoenix police officer. Concerned about her sister's safety, Cindy asked her boyfriend to perform a welfare check at Michelle's workplace. When he arrived, he found Michelle's car parked outside, but upon inspecting it, he didn't notice anything out of the ordinary and assumed Michelle was working in the office. However, when he entered the office, he was surprised to find no one there. The lights were on, and music was playing, but what he saw next raised concerns. Michelle's purse and pager were left on the table, unlocked, with no signs of struggle or explanation for her sudden departure. That evening, Michelle's family filed an official missing persons report with the police. Earlier that day, Michelle had scheduled a meeting with a potential buyer to show them 3 houses near her office, so she decided not to drive. The police officers who responded to the report inspected Michelle's office and then visited the 3 model homes she may have been showing to the buyer. They performed a preliminary search of each house and found 3 pink buttons in the master closet, on the 2nd floor of one of them. They also noticed that 2 candles in the master bathroom had been knocked over, 1 into each sink, but everything else seemed undisturbed. Cindy's boyfriend got in touch with Cindy to ask if she could describe what Michelle was wearing that day. He wanted to know if the pink buttons found belonged to Michelle's clothes. Unfortunately, Cindy couldn't recall what Michelle had on that day. The officers were convinced that the buttons belonged to a woman due to their color. The police conducted a more thorough search of all 3 houses, focusing especially on the one where the buttons were discovered. Tragically, they found Michelle Anglin's lifeless body under the master bed, which was twisted, severely bruised, and showed signs of a violent struggle. In the closet of the same bedroom, they found traces of seminal fluid, indicating a possible sexual assault. Further investigation revealed broken ceramic candlesticks, pieces of Michelle's clothing, paint, and plaster chips under the bed, as well as in the master bathroom. However, the autopsy revealed no evidence of forced intimacy before Michelle's death. The forensic expert concluded that the perpetrator had attempted to undress Michelle, but she resisted, leading to a violent struggle. Michelle was ultimately strangled, as evidenced by 3 bruises on the left side of her neck and 1 on the right side. According to court documents, a fierce fight took place between Michelle and her attacker in the master closet and bathroom. The master closet contained buttons and seminal fluid, indicating a significant struggle. Additionally, the master bathroom area had damaged candles and candlesticks, while both the bathroom and under the master bed had paint and ceramic chips. These findings demonstrated the extent of the violence. Michelle's clothing was torn and intertwined, suggesting that the perpetrator had forcibly ripped it from her body. She suffered numerous abrasions and bruises on various parts of her body, and her injured hands and wrists indicated that she had been struggling to defend herself. Michelle's mother, Peggy Cohen McCall, reflected on her daughter's tragic death, saying she thinks about her every day. However, instead of remembering the good times, she can only recall the bad times and the fear Michelle must have felt in her final moments. Peggy Cohen McCall was not present to comfort her daughter and alleviate her fears. Following her daughter's death, Peggy Cohen McCall claimed she lost her job due to speaking out about the dangers faced by women working alone at open houses and model homes. The police's first port of call in their investigation was Michelle's husband, Hudson England. This was a routine step, as the police always consider the possibility that a family member might be involved in a crime. Michelle's family didn't think Hudson was capable of taking his wife's life, given that they had been married for just 4 months and seemed happy and in love. However, it's worth noting that a short marriage doesn't rule out the possibility of foul play, as seen in the tragic case of Krista Alexander, who was found dead just 4 months after her wedding. The investigators interviewed Hudson, and he appeared genuinely shaken by Michelle's death. He readily shared his whereabouts and activities on the day of her murder. According to Hudson, he had spent the day visiting car dealerships in search of a family car, as he and Michelle were planning to start a family. The police verified his alibi and found it to be true, which led them to clear him of suspicion. Hudson also told the investigators that he had no idea who might have wanted to harm Michelle, and suspected that she might have been attacked by someone she was showing the house to. The police examined Michelle's mobile phone records, which revealed that on February 9th, she was on a call with a fellow sales agent between 3:45 and 4:15 p.m. During this conversation, Michelle mentioned that she had to end the call because a potential buyer had just arrived at her subdivision. The agent tried to return Michelle's call between 4:30 p.m. and 5 p.m., but received no answer. This information allowed the detectives to narrow down the time frame of Michelle's attack. However, they still needed to identify the identity of the potential buyer she was supposed to show the model homes to. Unfortunately, Michelle did not mention the man's name during her phone conversation with the fellow agent, nor did she record his name in her work notes. The police lacked immediate leads on the mysterious potential buyer due to lack of information. To generate leads, they sought out witnesses, interviewing residents in the area where Michelle was attacked. A local resident, who coincidentally arrived home from work between 4:45 p.m. on February 9th, reported seeing a white man descending the steps of one of the 3 houses for sale. This witness also noticed a black, older model Chevrolet pickup truck with California license plates in the house's parking lot. Additionally, prospective buyers who visited the subdivision between 4 and 4:30 p.m. that day recalled seeing a man walking from the direction of the 2nd and 3rd model homes. They also reported that candlesticks in the 3rd model's master bath had been knocked over into the sinks. The police made a public appeal through the media, seeking any relevant information about the case. They shared details about Michelle Anglin's attack, hoping for clues, and fortunately, this effort was successful. Kim Ramos, a young real estate sales associate, contacted the police on February 9th, the same day Michelle's lifeless body was found. Ramos reported that at around 2 p.m. that day, she had met with a potential buyer who drove an old black Chevrolet pickup truck. The truck caught her attention because it seemed out of place with the $500,000 house the client wanted to buy, suggesting a more modest lifestyle. The client asked Ramos to accompany him to a 2-story house to answer some questions. Although she went with him, she was cautious due to his invasion of her personal space, walking too close and touching her hand several times. She also thought his questions about the tiled floor and the option of a 4th bedroom and den were unconvincing. Ramos asked the client to fill out a guest registration card, which he completed, listing his name as James Adams and providing his home address and phone number. Later, police officers arrived at the address and saw an old black Chevrolet pickup truck with California license plates. Although 32-year-old James Van Adams, the truck's owner, was not home, the police took pictures of the truck and showed them to Ramos. She confirmed that it was the same pickup truck driven by the suspicious client she had met earlier that day, just before Michelle Anglin's death. When investigators looked into James Van Adams's past, they were surprised by what they found. He was married and had a child, but he and his wife were currently going through a separation. Adams had a criminal record, having been convicted in California for a crime he committed in 1990. Melissa Cunningham, a petite 5'4" sales agent weighing 102 pounds, was working alone at a new apartment complex when Adams approached her. He asked her to show him around the model homes that were still under construction. Specifically, he was interested in a 2-story model with a master bedroom and bathroom upstairs. Melissa spent a few minutes with Adams in the upstairs master bedroom and bathroom. As they made their way back down the stairs, Melissa, who was leading the way, heard 2 thuds that sounded like footsteps. She felt a sudden push and fell to the floor below. Adams quickly apologized, claiming he had tripped on a nail, which they both looked for as an explanation for the incident. Adams grabbed Melissa from behind, wrapping one hand around her neck and choking her while twisting her head to the left with his other hand. He threatened to break her neck if she screamed. He then dragged her down the hallway into the kitchen, threw her to the floor, and started tearing off her clothes. Luckily, Melissa managed to escape. She memorized the license plate of Adams' truck and contacted the police. Adams was soon arrested and spent only 2 years in prison for the attack. When investigating Michelle Anglin's death, it didn't take long for detectives to discover Adams' previous failed attack. They obtained a search and arrest warrant, returned to Adams' home, and took him in for questioning. However, he refused to talk and appeared nervous, with injuries under his eye. The detectives suspected that these injuries could have been inflicted by Michelle defending herself with the missing candlesticks, which were later found. They took samples of James's DNA, blood, and hair for further investigation. Kim Ramos, who had met with Adams just a few hours before Michelle's body was found, stated that when she showed him around the house, he didn't have any injuries, bruises, or scratches on his face. However, Adams later claimed that he got hurt while working on his pickup truck. But during the investigation, it was discovered that Adams left work on February 9th at noon and didn't return, citing car troubles. His employer and colleague testified that when they saw him next, he had a facial injury and a black eye that hadn't been there on February 8th or 9th. Initially, the analysis of Adams's DNA, blood, and hair samples excluded him as a contributor, but when the crime lab retested the samples, they got contradictory results, this time including him as a contributor. The Department of Public Safety, DPS, verified the latter result with additional testing. Although the police took extensive fingerprints and footprints at the model home, none of them matched Adams. James Van Adams denied any involvement in the crime. His trial started on July 1st, 1997. Prosecutors presented evidence that implicated Adams in Michelle's death, including testimony from Kim Ramos, who believed she was lucky because Adams had intended to target her before attacking Michelle. Ramos also stated that she didn't believe Adams was genuinely interested in buying a house, citing his clothing, vehicle, and questions about the flooring and fourth bedroom, which she thought were absurd. The state also presented evidence of Adams' interactions with other sales agents on several occasions. In California, several years prior, Adams had interacted with agents. Additionally, months before the attack on Michelle Anglin, he had been in Briarwood, Sientra, and even hours before the attack, he was in contact with other agents. Susan Wright, an employee of Homes by Dave Brown, testified that she had multiple face-to-face meetings with Adams at the Briarwood subdivision and numerous phone conversations with him while working at Briarwood and later at another subdivision. Wright remembered their first meeting in September or October 1995, when Adams asked to view a house for sale. She recalled that Adams stood too close to her and, despite indicating he had questions, didn't ask a single question during the viewing. When other potential buyers arrived, they immediately left and returned to the office. On November 5th, 1995, Adams visited Wright's office again, filling out the guest registration card as Jim Adams. According to Wright, Adams repeatedly visited her office and called her, asking her out on dates each time. It became apparent that James Van Adams exhibited a repetitive pattern of criminal behavior. The victims he attacked in California in 1990, including Michelle Anglin, Susan Wright, Kim Ramos, and Melissa Cunningham, shared similar physical characteristics. Additionally, they all worked alone, and the incidents occurred in the afternoon. In the cases of Melissa Cunningham and Kim Ramos, Adams requested that they accompany him to an upstairs location in a two-story house. The evidence found near Michelle Anglin's body suggested that he made the same request to her as well. Adams's method of attack involved putting his right arm around the victims' necks, as seen in the cases of Michelle Anglin and Melissa Cunningham. In both instances, the attacker removed the victims' clothes and attempted to sexually assault them, indicating that Adams was preparing to commit a crime. Adams targeted potential victims who worked alone and could show him houses for sale without witnesses. The trial process proved to be another ordeal for Michelle's family, who were present in the courtroom. The judge had to remove Michelle's mother, Peggy Cohen McCall, due to her emotional outbursts as she screamed at Adams. However, Adams seemed to take pleasure in seeing Michelle's family suffer and periodically flashed a grin during the trial. On July 14, 1997, the court sentenced Adams to death, despite his claims of innocence throughout the trial. He subsequently exhausted all legal avenues to appeal the verdict, citing the 1990 incident in California, where Melissa Cunningham escaped as evidence that he didn't intend to kill Michelle Anglin. Adams argued that, given this previous incident, the jury should have concluded he was guilty of premeditated second-degree murder, not first-degree murder. Ultimately, all his appeals failed. Adams was found dead in his prison cell on March 14, 2005, and attempts to resuscitate him were unsuccessful. The cause of death was asphyxia, which he had inflicted upon himself. Upon hearing the news, Michelle's family, including her mother Peggy, were overjoyed, with Peggy describing it as a good day. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Zoe Nelson. Zoe Nelson was born on August 13, 1992, in Wishaw, Scotland. At the age of 18, she lived with her mother, stepfather, and two younger sisters, including 16-year-old Laura Ann, in New Mains, a village on the eastern edge of Wishaw, about 18 miles southeast of Glasgow. Zoe attended Motherwell College, where she was a popular student with many friends. A complicated romantic situation developed when both Zoe and her sister Laura Ann became involved with the same 20-year-old man, Robert Bane, who lived with his grandparents about a mile from the Nelson family home. Tensions between the sisters increased, leading to conflicts. On May 22, 2010, Zoe met Robert outside her home, which upset Laura Ann. When Laura Ann saw this, she rushed out of the house to confront Zoe. Their 40-year-old mother, Mary Ann Nelson, witnessed the fight between her daughters. According to Mary Ann, Laura Ann tried to provoke Zoe by flicking her hair and attempted to slap her face, leading to a physical altercation at the end of the driveway. Mary Ann intervened, breaking up the fight and telling the sisters to leave and not come back. Zoe complied with her mother's order and never returned home. At around 11 p.m. that same day, some locals spotted someone setting a fire in the wooded area known as Monkey Hill. The smell of smoke drifted to nearby homes, but at the time, no one paid much attention. Zoe's aunt, 35-year-old Shirley Nelson, later remembered that night, describing how she was sitting in her garden in New Mains after finishing her second shift at work. She and her sister sat in the back of the house until about 11 p.m. when it got cooler and they smelled smoke. However, they didn't think anything of it because of the warm weather. The next day, Zoe's family tried to contact her, but no one answered. On the afternoon of May 23rd, Stuart Bell, a 45-year-old government employee from Wishaw, rode his motorcycle into a nearby wooded area and saw something strange. At first, he thought it was a charred tailor's dummy, but upon closer inspection, he realized it was a human body that had been badly damaged in a fire. He immediately went home to call the police, who arrived 15 to 20 minutes later. When the police arrived, they sealed off the area, as nothing so horrific had ever occurred there before. News of the body's discovery quickly spread, and when Zoe's family learned of it, her mother, Mary Ann Nelson, went to the police to report her daughter's disappearance, which had happened after they had fought, and Mary Ann told Zoe not to come home. The police soon broke the devastating news to the Nelson family. Zoe had fallen victim to a crime. Mary Ann issued a statement through the police, describing Zoe as a typical popular 17-year-old with a strong presence in the local community and many friends. In just a couple of months, she would have turned 18. Her family is deeply distraught over her loss. Zoe's stepfather, Daniel, and her sisters, Laura Ann and Ashley, are heartbroken about what happened, and the family is urging anyone with information to come forward and assist the police in their investigation. Hugh Logan, the principal of Motherwell College, where Zoe studied vehicle body repair, expressed shock on behalf of the college community upon learning the dreadful news of her death. He described Zoe as a very popular student and conveyed that the college's thoughts are with her family and friends. A thorough investigation of the scene spanned several days. with a team of at least 50 police officers working on the case. Detective Derek Robertson, part of the main investigation team, lamented the loss of Zoe's young life and vowed that his officers would not rest until the perpetrator was caught. He urged anyone who saw Zoe between 5 p.m. and 11:20 p.m. on Saturday night to come forward and assist the investigation. Robertson noted that, given the area's popularity on the hottest day of the year, numerous people would have been taking shortcuts and sunbathing, and that the police were particularly interested in speaking with those who may have used the dirt trails, including one that crossed near the location where Zoe's body was found. Zoe was about 5 feet 6 inches tall, with a heavy build and collar-length brown hair. At the time she went missing, she was wearing gray tracksuit bottoms, a white long-sleeved top, and black Nike trainers. The detectives have been reviewing CCTV footage, phone records, and computer data, as well as conducting door-to-door inquiries and speaking to Zoe's friends and family to try to recreate her last movements on May 26th. The police released video footage from a local shop where Zoe was seen just hours before she died. These small details were crucial to the investigation, as they helped the police trace Zoe's movements and ultimately led to the arrest of the person responsible for her death. After examining the crime scene, investigators found a red plastic sombrero-shaped cap from a Sierra Silver tequila bottle near the body and an empty bottle of the same brand on the other side of a small walkway nearby. Due to the body being exposed to fire for approximately 7 hours, forensic experts faced limitations in determining the exact cause of death. The body was discovered with a partially melted plastic bag covering most of the face, leading pathologists to conclude that asphyxiation was the most likely cause of death. Despite the damage, the palm of the right hand remained relatively intact, allowing 2 DNA samples to be collected, one matching Zoe Nelson herself and the other belonging to an unidentified male. Ultimately, the official cause of death was recorded as undetermined. By May 28th, police had gathered several witness statements that provided a disturbing account of Zoe's last days. One witness reported seeing Zoe with a heavily intoxicated and aggressive man at around 5:15 p.m. on May 22nd, who was hitting her on the head. Another witness claimed to have seen Zoe walking with a man with a tattooed face near his home in New Mains. A third witness described seeing Zoe with a similar-looking man in New Mains, who appeared angry, hit a lamppost, and threatened to take someone's life that night. Multiple witnesses came forward, all describing the same young man, 20-year-old Robert Bane. Notably, Robert Bane had a prior criminal record despite his youth. He had served 18 months in prison for robbery and was released just 7 weeks before Zoe's death. Additionally, he had been arrested 4 times for possessing illegal substances, though as a juvenile, he faced minimal consequences. Investigators started to view Robert Bane as a prime suspect in the case. Before they could take further action, Bane surprisingly turned up at the police station in Wishaw around 5:50 p.m. on May 28th. He was clearly intoxicated, slurring his words, and wanted to make a statement. Bane claimed that a few days prior, he had been in Motherwell, where he got on a bus to return home. During the journey, he said, a man named Stuart Campbell boarded the same bus. Bane alleged that he approached Campbell and asked if he had been with Zoe on the previous Saturday night. According to Bane, Campbell's response was incriminating. Yes, I took her life. This was the first mention of Stuart Campbell's name during the entire investigation, whereas Robert Bane's name had come up repeatedly. As a result, the police arrested Bane on the same day. A strong justification for Robert Bane's arrest would emerge during his trial. At the time of his arrest, Bane claimed to have last seen Zoe on the morning in May. However, forensic tests revealed incriminating evidence against him. A DNA sample from Zoe Nelson's hand revealed not only her own DNA, but also traces of another person's DNA, which matched part of Bane's DNA profile. Additionally, DNA evidence found on a tequila bottle and its cap, discovered near Zoe's body, matched both Zoe Nelson and Robert Bane. According to the forensic expert, this suggested that both individuals had consumed from the bottle and then replaced the cap. Expert Marie Campbell stated that the scientific findings indicated that Robert Bane's DNA was deposited between Zoe Nelson's fingers and on her right palm. The chances of the DNA found on the red plastic sombrero lid belonging to anyone other than Robert Bane were an astonishing 10 million to 1. Robert Bane was accused of being involved in Zoe Nelson's death due to multiple eyewitness accounts and DNA evidence. Despite this, he pleaded not guilty and acted defiantly, even confronting one of the investigators. He also denied an earlier alleged assault on Zoe, where a witness claimed he struck her on the head with his fist. Hundreds attended Zoe Nelson's funeral at Courtness Memorial Church on June 16, 2010. She was laid to rest at Campus Nathan Cemetery. Over 200 mourners, including her mother, sisters, and grandmother, gathered to pay their respects. Reverend Graham Rayburn led the service, noting the large turnout as a testament to Zoe's significant impact. He described her as a happy, cheerful teenager with a big heart who loved fast cars and ranges. Sadly, she never met her newborn nephew or got to contact her biological father. On March 1, 2011, Robert Bane's trial began, during which he maintained his innocence. Testifying in court, Zoe Nelson's teenage friends recalled a conversation they had with her a week before her death, in which she attributed her scratches and bruises to a fight with Robert Bane. According to her friends, Zoe described Bane as bossy, unstable, and prone to anger over minor issues. He also controlled her social circle, dictating which friends she could see. Although Zoe and Bane's relationship was relatively short-lived, given he had only been out of prison for 2 months, he exerted significant influence over her and also pursued a relationship with her 16-year-old sister, Laura Ann. Notably, Laura Ann was aware of her sister's death 5 days before the body was discovered by a passerby, but kept this secret until the trial, where it was revealed that Bane had taken Laura Ann to the location of Zoe's body. Laura Ann, who testified from behind a screen to avoid seeing Bane, recounted that on May 23rd, the day after her argument with Zoe, she visited Bane's address to return some clothes. Upon arrival, she observed that Robert seemed nervous and had been consuming vodka. They soon left the house, with Bane claiming he wanted to show her something. According to Laura Ann, he led her to the location where Zoe's body lay. Recognizing the ranger's tattoo on her arm, Laura Ann identified the body as her sister. During court questioning, Laura Ann stated that Bane had confessed to hitting Zoe, and when Zoe attempted to retaliate, he lost control and took her life. Bane then allegedly used gasoline in an attempt to eliminate any evidence of the crime. Laura Ann confessed to walking with Bane on the day following the discovery of the body. Afterwards, she visited his home, spending time in his bedroom, where they listened to music together. She also had a phone conversation with him that lasted around an hour. A friend of Laura Ann, who testified in court, recalled that Laura Ann seemed happy and normal, despite knowing her sister was dead. When questioned about why she didn't reveal everything to the police during her initial interrogation, Laura Ann explained that she was afraid that if she told them, her mother wouldn't believe her and would think she was responsible for Zoe's death. The jury heard testimony from Laura Ann Nelson, who stated that Robert Bane had threatened her, saying she would face the same consequences as Zoe if she told anyone about his actions. On March 25, 2011, a jury of 7 men and 7 women delivered a unanimous guilty verdict. As the verdict was read, Bane became violent, requiring physical restraint. Handcuffed, he jumped up in the dock, struggling with security officers and police, and headbutting one of them. He also shouted insults and threats at Zoe Nelson's family, forcing the courtroom to be cleared while order was restored. After a 20-minute adjournment, Judge Lady Dorian agreed to proceed with the trial in Bane's absence. In a separate matter, Robert Bane was acquitted of stealing alcohol from an Asda store in New Mains on May 22nd, as well as disorderly conduct related to yelling cursing and waving a knife in various streets in Wishaw on the same day. Bane was also acquitted of stealing Zoe's cell phone, which was found in the woods, and of threatening a police officer during an interview at the Motherwell police station on May 28. On April 27, 2011, Robert Bane was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 20 years for taking the life of Zoe Nelson. He received another 6 years for the obstruction of justice charge, and both sentences were to be served concurrently. The judge, Lady Dorian, described the crime as appalling and shocking. On Christmas Eve 2022, 29-year-old Laura Ann Nelson was found dead in her apartment after not being heard from for days. She was left with 2 children, ages 3 and 4. Her death was not considered criminal, as she had health problems, namely type 1 diabetes. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Nicholas Billingham. Fiona Beale and Nicholas Billingham were together for 17 years, with their fair share of ups and downs like any other couple. Although their case was closed 2 weeks ago, many details are likely to emerge later. Here's what I've learned about their relationship so far. Leslie Oldham, who knew the couple well, described them as follows. "I found Fiona to be really nice," Leslie recalled. "Although they didn't exhibit overt displays of affection, they seemed happy enough. Nicholas brought her over for a cup of tea, and she was polite and chatty." Nicholas had a reputation as a ladies' man, which made it difficult to predict how long his relationships would last. Fiona and Nicholas's relationship ended in November 2021. After splitting up with Fiona Beale, Nicholas Billingham remained in contact with his friends and family. He sent a text to his mother, informing her that he had run off with a woman named Faye, and claimed to be thrilled with his new life. Fiona took 10 days to recover from the breakup, and when she finally felt better, she returned to work. Her colleagues, who had heard about the split, offered her many words of encouragement upon her return. However, the breakup with Nicholas had a lasting impact on her, and it was noticeable to many. By the end of February 2022, nearly 4 months after the breakup, Fiona's mental health began to decline. She found it difficult to continue living in a house that held so many memories of Nicholas, so she made the decision to move to Cumbria, a location roughly 200 miles from Northampton. Fiona started planning her next moves after her husband went to bed. She couldn't sleep in the same bed as him due to her loud breathing, restlessness, or snoring. In another notebook entry, she mentioned that Nicholas had been mean and cruel to her for 17 years, but it was his vile behavior at Halloween that made her decide she couldn't let him get away with it anymore. Nicholas Billingham disappeared on November 1st, 2021, and from that moment, he kept in touch with his family and friends, only through text messages. The day after the police officers read Fiona Beale's notebook, they visited the house on Moore Street, where she lived with Nicholas. Upon examination, they found nothing suspicious. However, when they returned the following day, they discovered some telling signs, including a blood-stained mattress in the cellar. On March 19th, the police went back to Moore Street and uncovered more evidence. With the help of forensic officers, specialist search teams, and a cadaver dog, they found a buried body in the rear garden. The remains of Billingham were discovered wrapped in carpet, buried beneath a layer of bark chippings, soil, wooden sheeting, concrete building blocks, bricks, and planks. Additionally, plastic bags, rubble, mortar, polystyrene, laminate flooring, and sections of fabric and vinyl were found in a constructed hideaway covering the body. A sleep mask covered the victim's eyes, with the phrase, "This is my morning after face," printed on the inside. The police spokesman described the body as being wrapped in cables, hose pipes, and plastic bags, surrounded by building debris, saying it showed a complete lack of dignity in death and utter contempt. A post-mortem examination took place the day after the body was found. The results revealed that the victim died from a single stab wound to the right side of the neck, which severed the right jugular vein and cut through the esophagus and trachea. This would have required moderate force, although it is possible that more severe force was used. On March 22, 2022, police arrested Fiona Beale and charged her with the murder of Nicholas Billingham. Nicholas's family was devastated by his death and shocked to discover that Fiona had used his phone to send texts to them and his friends. Nicholas's mother, Yvonne Valentine, shared a message with journalists. In a statement, Nicholas's family expressed their grief, saying they lost Nicholas too soon and that he will always be in their hearts. They have been overwhelmed with kind support and comforting words from many people and are aware that Nicholas will be deeply missed by his friends, family, and loved ones. Nicholas's family is heartbroken, remembering him as a lovely boy who grew into a proud young man, leaving them with cherished memories. Fiona Beale's colleagues and the parents of her students were stunned to discover that the respected teacher had a hidden, darker side. The school administration, where Fiona worked, released a statement expressing shock and sadness upon learning that one of their teaching staff members was charged with a serious offense and is now in custody. They are particularly concerned about the impact this news will have on the students and are committed to supporting both pupils and staff during this difficult time. This tragedy will have a profound effect on the school community, and it's during such times that they must come together, support each other, and show kindness to one another. When the police investigated, they discovered that Nicholas had died on November 1st, 2021. In the days that followed, Fiona attempted to cover her tracks. She had meticulously planned her actions. Fiona was aware that if she claimed to have contracted the virus, she would have a 10-day window during which she would be left alone. It is suspected that she falsified test results to complete an online form. There is no evidence to suggest that Fiona ever took the test. Her activities during those 10 days were inconsistent with the debilitating symptoms she claimed to be experiencing. Following the murder, Fiona began cleaning up as early as 10:07 a.m. on November 2nd. Using her dead partner's Amazon account, and then her own, she purchased multiple cleaning products, including items for Venetian blinds, a new mop and bucket, heavy-duty bin bags, a new mattress, bedding, clothing, wall art, and mirrors. On the same day, she modified a Tesco order containing cleaning products to add 3 rolls of duct tape. At 2:19 p.m., she bought heavy-duty long gardening gloves, a stainless steel digging spade, and a galvanized incinerator bin. Additionally, she made multiple purchases to dispose of the body and acquired items for her own comfort and indulgence, such as chocolates, scented candles, toiletries, soft furnishings, and clothing. Nearly 2 weeks after killing Nicholas, Fiona went on a shopping trip. On November 13th, supermarket security cameras recorded her buying various items, including building materials, which she later used to construct a grave. The police later released this CCTV footage. As previously mentioned, Fiona pretended to be Nicholas by sending texts to his family and friends for several months. She even invited Nicholas's mother to visit her. Miss Valentine recounted how Fiona invited her to her home for a Christmas drink on December 23, 2021, while Nicholas's body lay buried in the backyard. Fiona went about her daily routine, showing no signs of depression or trauma. In fact, the evidence suggested the opposite. After murdering her unwanted partner, who she suspected was having an affair, she was embracing what she referred to in a deleted file as a new life. During the trial, Fiona Beale initially pleaded not guilty, but later confessed to taking Nicholas's life, claiming it was an involuntary act. However, the prosecutor disagreed. He presented evidence that Nicholas Billingham had been unfaithful to Fiona with multiple women during their 17-year relationship. Although Nicholas had left Fiona on several occasions, he always returned to her, and she took him back. One of his infidelities resulted in a child being born. Instead of leaving him, Fiona meticulously planned his murder, deciding when and how to kill him, where to hide his body, and how to cover her tracks. She even prepared an alibi for her absence from work on the day of the murder. Defense attorney Andrew Wheeler presented a statement to the jury following the prosecution's opening argument, stating that Fiona had struggled with mental health issues for years prior to the killing due to Mr. Billingham's controlling behavior. Wheeler emphasized that the case was not as straightforward as the prosecution claimed, highlighting Fiona's good character and reputation as a 49-year-old school teacher. Wheeler acknowledged that Fiona unlawfully killed Nicholas Billingham, but emphasized that the case revolves around her mental state at the time. He argued that Billingham's psychologically dominant behavior had worn Fiona down over the years, breaking her spirit. The court was informed that Fiona Beale has no clear recollection of the actual event. After visiting London, Fiona continued to send messages to the head teacher, claiming she was ill. In March, the concerned head teacher reached out to Fiona's mother, who revealed that Fiona had told her she was going on a school residential trip. The head teacher then notified the police, reporting Fiona as missing. The Cumbrian police traced Fiona to a rented address near Kendal, but she insisted she just wanted some peace and quiet, and did not want her family to know her exact location. The officer relayed this message to Fiona's mother, but 3 days later, the authorities returned to the lodge after Fiona sent her family a message apologizing and expressing her love for them. Eventually, Fiona Beale altered her initial statement and fully acknowledged her guilt. At Northampton Crown Court, she shared details about her personal life and career with the jury, claiming that Billingham had twice thrown a dinner plate against a wall due to their disagreements over cleanliness. Fiona recalled her university days, during which she was prescribed antidepressants. She described her partner Billingham as caring and attentive initially, but changing gradually over time. At the start of their relationship, Fiona had accidentally left a cloth with cleaner on it, which stained a worktop. Although it didn't seem serious at first, cleaning became a major issue throughout the years. Instead of laughing it off, Fiona would get scolded. When having meals together, Fiona explained that everything had to be exactly as Billingham wanted it. She couldn't pinpoint when this behavior started, but it worsened over time and continued until the end. Even the way items were placed in cupboards was strictly regulated, with everything facing outwards. Fiona claimed that Billingham threw plates of dinner at the wall on a couple of occasions, which made her lose confidence. She mentioned that his behavior started as joking about her not doing something, but eventually turned nasty. Before taking his life, Fiona told Billingham that she would kill him to prevent him from hurting another woman the way he had hurt her. She later accused him of lying to his own family to protect himself, prioritizing his own self-preservation and attempting to show her in a bad light. Nicholas left behind 2 beautiful children who will never have the opportunity to see or talk to their father again. They'll never be able to invite him to special events, have him attend their weddings, teach them to drive, or simply spend time with him. You've taken all of that away from them. Fiona received a prison sentence of 20 years. Speaking after the guilty plea, Nicholas's mother, Yvonne, expressed her outrage and pain, saying it was unbearable to know that her son's killer had offered her a drink while his body lay buried just a few feet away. She struggled to comprehend how someone could harbor such hatred to commit such a heinous act. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Valerie Teeman. Valerie Teeman was born on December 31, 1981, in Salem, Virginia. Valerie Joy Harmon was the child of Sarah Jean Sampson Harmon and Jean Allen Harmon. She grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, and graduated from Hampton Park Christian School in 2000. Valerie then earned her cosmetology degree from Bob Jones University. Known for her warm, friendly smile and outgoing personality, Valerie was passionate about drama and speech. She enjoyed music, playing the piano and flute. Using her cosmetology skills, Valerie worked in salons, spas, and pageants, helping others look and feel their best. Valerie met Matt through a mutual friend when she was 22. Despite their contrasting personalities, Valerie was outgoing and cheerful, while Matt was more withdrawn. They made it work. The couple got married in 2004 and initially lived harmoniously in Matt's small house after their honeymoon. However, Valerie's parents soon noticed changes in her behavior. Matt tightly controlled their finances, forcing Valerie to open a separate bank account to save personally. As time passed, Matt's behavior worsened as he sought to control every aspect of Valerie's life and blamed her for all their problems. Valerie endured much emotional pain, but eventually reached her breaking point. After 10 years, she divorced Matt, seeking a fresh start. Luke Teeman brought a fresh start to Valerie's life, helping her put her past problems behind her. With his 10-year Army background, including service in Iraq and Afghanistan, Valerie saw him as a reliable and loving partner. Her relatives noticed a significant change in her as she became cheerful and smiling once again, just like 10 years prior. The couple got married on June 6, 2014, and began living at Luke's parents' house in Fairfield, Maine, while Valerie's parents resided in South Carolina. After visiting her family in South Carolina, Luke and Valerie returned to Maine in August 2016. On August 24, 2016, Valerie's mother, Sarah Jean Harmon, had her last conversation with her daughter through text messages. Around that time, Luke had started chatting with a woman on Facebook and was seen with her by several people. On the night of August 24th, Luke and the woman were intimate, and it appears that Valerie discovered their infidelity that night. On August 25, 2016, Valerie called Luke 31 times within a 5-hour span. A mutual friend of the couple contacted Valerie via Messenger, informing her that Luke was involved with other women and claiming they were separated. Valerie responded with several messages, expressing her heartbreak and conveying that God had a plan, and that Luke would never find a better woman than her, and that he had lost her. On August 26, 2016, Luke Teeman moved in with the woman he was having an affair with, claiming to her that his wife Valerie had left him for another man. Meanwhile, Valerie's parents, Sarah Jean and Alan Harmon, were growing concerned because Valerie, who had been calling them every week, had suddenly stopped responding to their calls and texts. After a week of trying to reach her, they decided to contact Luke, asking how he and Valerie were doing. The next day, Luke replied, saying they were fine and that he loved her very much. However, another 13 days went by with no word from Valerie, prompting her parents to reach out to Luke's father for help. To their shock, Luke's father told them that Valerie had been missing for about 2 weeks and that they had not seen her. He even asked what to do with her belongings. When Alan confronted Luke about why he hadn't told them about Valerie's disappearance, Luke claimed he was waiting for Valerie to contact her parents herself, as he didn't want to speak poorly of her. He repeated the story that Valerie had left him for another man, but her parents knew it was untrue. It was out of character for Valerie, and they were certain she would have reached out to them because she knew they would worry. On September 9, 2016, Alan filed a report with the Fairfield Police Department stating Valerie was missing. The detectives launched an investigation, which began with a visit to Luke Teeman's parents, where Valerie had been living with her husband. During the visit, they spoke with Luke's mother, Laurel Teeman, but she claimed to have no knowledge of their whereabouts. As a result, the detectives left without gaining any new information. Valerie's parents had always thought it was difficult for their daughter to live with Laurel, who they saw as overbearing. 2 weeks after Valerie's disappearance, Laurel packed all of her belongings into garbage bags. This action clearly reflected Laurel's attitude towards her daughter-in-law. She seemed unconcerned about Valerie's well-being and was primarily motivated by a desire to clear the house of her belongings. The police were searching for Luke Teeman to ask him some questions, but he was nowhere to be found. They went to his home, but he wasn't there. And his parents claimed they didn't know his whereabouts. However, 5 days after Valerie's disappearance, Luke unexpectedly contacted the police himself, stating that he was aware they wanted to speak with him. During the conversation, the detectives asked him about Valerie and the last time he saw her. Luke's response was peculiar. He explained that, about 2 weeks prior, he and Valerie had stopped by the local Walmart to purchase some groceries. While he went inside the store, Valerie stayed in the car. When he finished shopping and returned to the vehicle, Valerie was gone. Luke claimed that he tried to reach her by calling and texting, offering to take her back. He also revealed that his marriage to Valerie was on the verge of collapse. According to him, Valerie had mentioned another man during a conversation, leading him to believe she was having an affair. Despite this, Luke didn't know the man's identity or address, and he assumed Valerie had left him for this unknown individual. Valerie's family, however, insisted she had never mentioned anyone else besides Luke Teeman in her life. The police made a public appeal through the media, releasing a photo of Valerie and asking anyone who had seen her in the recent weeks to come forward with information for the detectives. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance from the Walmart parking lot, including her belongings being found in garbage bags, seemed suspicious. It was also unclear why Luke Teeman, Valerie's husband, had made no effort to search for her, possibly due to being preoccupied with another woman. Investigators visited the Walmart where Luke and Valerie had been on the day of her disappearance, where they reviewed the surveillance footage. Despite searching for over an hour, they found no evidence of Luke, his red pickup truck, or Valerie on any of the recordings. This discovery revealed that Luke had lied to the police and that he was hiding something. The investigators decided to interview Luke in person, but they didn't disclose all the information they had obtained. They suspected that he might contradict himself or alter his story if he knew what they knew. Luke's open affair with Billie Jo Goodman didn't go unnoticed by anyone. While he admitted to cheating on Valerie, he claimed it was an attempt to heal from their recent breakup. Billie Jo, however, had a string of failed relationships behind her, but when she met Luke, she believed he was the one with whom she could build a stable future. This new development led investigators to a crucial question. Did Valerie pose a threat to Luke and Billie Jo's budding relationship? Was it possible that the couple wanted to start anew, and Valerie's presence was an obstacle they decided to eliminate to ensure their plans went undisrupted? The police interviewed Billie Jo, who claimed she thought Luke had divorced his wife. When questioned, she denied any knowledge of Valerie Teeman's disappearance. Meanwhile, a local informant tipped off the police about a driver's license found in a parking lot near Billie Jo's home, and it belonged to Valerie. This discovery raised suspicions, as it seemed unlikely that Valerie would abandon her belongings and identification to run off with someone else. On September 19, 2016, Luke Teeman gave an interview to News Center, Maine, 10 days after Valerie's father, Alan, had filed a missing persons report with the police. During the interview, Luke told reporters that he and Valerie had gone to Walmart, but Valerie was not in the car when he returned. At the time, he was unaware that the Walmart CCTV footage did not corroborate his account. Police dogs trained to detect human remains were brought in to search the last known place where Valerie lived. The search plan involved checking the house, the land, and the stream. After about 5 minutes, a police dog picked up a scent in the woods behind the Teeman family house. An officer began digging the soil with his hands and found a shoe sticking out of the ground. Other officers, wearing gloves, joined in to help dig. They eventually uncovered a woman's body, wrapped in a blanket and buried with a collection of unusual items. These items included a bag of potato chips, a bottle of Gucci perfume, a package of sweet tarts, a flannel shirt, a mason jar, a handwritten note, and a wedding ring. The ring was discovered later when evidence was being prepared for trial. Sergeant Scott Bryant, chief of Maine's evidence response team, was processing the contents of the mason jar, which included dirt, flower stems, and twigs, when he heard a thud and found the ring. Although it was not specified who the ring belonged to, or whether it was a man's or woman's, Bryant noted that the ring was much larger than his own wedding ring. The body was transported to the forensic medical examiner's office for an autopsy and identification. Unfortunately, Sarah Jean and Alan Harmon received the devastating news that every parent fears the most. The body discovered behind the Teeman family house was identified as their daughter, Valerie. Valerie lived in the house with Luke, as well as his parents and younger brother Sam. The detectives searched the barn and found landscaping tools that belonged to Sam, which were used to dig the burial site where Valerie's body was found. They also discovered a device related to illegal substance use. Further investigation revealed that Sam Teeman had a history of using illegal substances, which Valerie had confided in her parents about during her visit to South Carolina. The police had to investigate whether Sam Teeman was involved in Valerie's death. During a search of Luke's parents' bedroom, investigators discovered a .45 caliber handgun that Luke Teeman had purchased in 2015. Despite this, Luke's parents claimed to have had no knowledge of Valerie's burial near their house, which seems unlikely. Around the time Valerie's body was found, investigators also discovered Luke with his new girlfriend, Billie Jo. Luke Teeman was arrested and taken in for questioning. He told investigators that Valerie had died from an overdose on August 25th, about a month prior, due to her use of illegal substances. According to Luke, he didn't inform Valerie's parents about her death because he wanted to spare them the knowledge of her drug use. Instead of calling 911, he left her body in bed until evening, then wrapped her in a blanket, added a note, and buried her in the woods behind the house with the help of his brother Sam. According to Luke, Valerie did not have any physical injuries before she died. However, the autopsy results revealed that Luke was not telling the truth. Although Valerie's blood showed no traces of banned substances, it did contain prescription drugs. But that was not the most astonishing finding. Valerie died from 2 gunshot wounds, one to the head and the other to the neck. The ballistics examination indicated that the bullets removed from Valerie's body came from a .45 caliber handgun. Significantly, this handgun matched the one found by investigators in Luke's parents' bedroom during a search. Luke admitted to buying the gun about a year prior, claiming it was for his father. Despite this, he denied knowing that Valerie had been shot. Luke Teeman, 32, has been charged with the murder of his 34-year-old wife, Valerie Teeman. Although his parents and younger brother were investigated, no evidence was found to implicate them. Luke claimed that his brother, Sam, helped him bury Valerie's body, but the police found that Sam was not at home at the time, and it remains unclear whether Luke's parents were aware of or involved in Valerie's death. It is noteworthy that they did not report hearing 2 gunshots on April 2, 2018. The trial began in Somerset County Superior Court in Skowhegan, Maine, with opening statements marking the start of a 5-day trial. Luke pleaded not guilty, arguing that he had been framed. He claimed that he would not have left incriminating evidence, such as an engagement ring and a note, near the body. But forensic examinations linked all the items found with Valerie's body to Luke Teeman. A computer forensics expert testified, revealing that Valerie's phone was last used on August 25, 2016, the day the police believe she died. The detective explained how tracking cell phone usage can help determine an individual's location at the time of a call. Valerie made 31 calls to Luke on the same day he allegedly spent time with his new girlfriend, Billie Jo. Luke only answered the last call, which lasted around 13 minutes. The police believe he was at home when the call ended. The morning after Valerie's disappearance, a woman sent a message to Valerie's phone, accusing Luke of cheating on her. This was the last time the woman was heard from. Luke's defense team questioned the authenticity of these phone records. In court, Luke's younger brother, Sam Teeman, testified against him. Luke had told the police that Sam helped him bury Valerie's body, but Sam denied any involvement, claiming he was working 2 hours away at the time. and had his work log as proof. Sam told the court that he confronted Luke after hearing he had implicated him, and Luke responded by saying, "What else do you do with a dead body?" The police continued to press Luke about who shot Valerie, even suggesting that his brother Sam or their parents might be involved. Luke insisted that they were incapable of such an act. The officers wondered if Luke might have blacked out due to his PTSD, which he had previously claimed would sometimes cause him to become enraged and forgetful afterwards. Several witnesses called by the prosecutor testified in court about the private lives of Luke and Valerie Teeman. They gave detailed accounts of how the couple frequently used significant amounts of illegal drugs. Additionally, they stated that Luke had informed people he was getting a divorce around the same time Valerie went missing. Luke's former girlfriend, Jackie Spencer, revealed to the jury that she had a close relationship with the couple and had even served as the maid of honor at their wedding. She stated that she had personally witnessed Valerie and Luke using various illegal drugs together. Furthermore, she testified that Luke had begun sending her numerous text messages around the time Valerie vanished, suggesting that he may have been interested in pursuing a romantic relationship with her. The jury was shown evidence from the crime scene, which included a video that depicted the approximately 3-minute walk from where Valerie's body was discovered to the Teemans' home. The video footage revealed an overgrown, all-terrain vehicle trail winding through a thickly forested area, a common feature found behind many rural homes in Maine. The defense team, representing Luke, raised objections to certain pieces of evidence, including gardening tools found in a shed near the property and a .45 caliber handgun discovered in one of the rooms of the home. They contended that the prosecution had failed to establish ownership of these items, suggesting that someone else in the household may have had access to them. During the trial, Luke Teeman acknowledged that he had changed his story multiple times, alleging that detectives had coerced him into providing false testimony. He insisted that he had no reason to kill his wife and that there was no DNA evidence connecting him to the crime scene. The prosecutors, however, argued that Teeman was the only person who could have harmed Valerie, and that all the evidence pointed to his guilt. The jury took less than an hour to deliberate before finding Teeman guilty. At the sentencing hearing, Valerie's mother expressed her grief and outrage, denouncing Teeman as an evil-hearted man who still refused to accept responsibility for his actions and demanded a life sentence. In contrast, Teeman's mother begged the court to consider her son's entire life and to balance justice with compassion. Ultimately, Teeman received a 55-year prison sentence, which was longer than his family had hoped. Despite later changing his testimony again while incarcerated, this did not have a positive impact on his case. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Stacy Smith. Born on September 21, 1977, Stacy Ann Smith was known to her family and friends as a beautiful and outgoing person. During her school days, she was a popular cheerleader who attracted a lot of male attention. After graduating, she met Stephen, the love of her life, and they decided to spend the rest of their lives together. In June 2002, they welcomed a daughter named Mackenzie, and soon after, they got married, believing their happiness would last forever. 4 years later, Stacy and Stephen had a son named Landon. However, their relationship began to deteriorate, and they eventually broke up in 2009. At the time, Landon was 3 years old, and Mackenzie was 7. The family lived in St. Albans, West Virginia. After her divorce, Stacy was determined to make her children happy. One day, she ran into an old acquaintance, Brent, on the street. They had attended high school together, and Brent had had a crush on her back then, although she didn't feel the same way. However, this chance encounter sparked a romance between them. As they got to know each other better, Stacy's ex-husband, Stephen, became aware of her new relationship. He would often see Stacy and Brent together when he came to pick up the kids for the weekend. Initially, Brent got along great with Stacy's children, which made her happy. However, as time went on, their relationship began to experience some turbulence. They started to have frequent arguments, mostly due to Brent's jealousy. He tried to exert control over certain aspects of her life, such as wanting to know who she was talking to on the phone. Despite their breakups, they would eventually reunite after calming down. On Christmas Eve in 2009, Stacy moved into a new home with her kids. Her cousin Timothy and boyfriend Brent lent a hand in decorating the house for Christmas and creating a warm ambience. A few days later, on December 28, 2009, Stacy's father John Paul attempted to reach his daughter by phone but received no response. As the hours ticked by with no answer or callback from Stacy, John grew concerned and decided to investigate. He got in the car and drove to the house where Stacy lived with her kids, a place they had occupied for only a few days before Christmas, and he wanted to check on their well-being. When John arrived at the house, everything seemed normal. He knocked on the front door and called out his daughter's name, but there was no response. The door was locked, so he looked through the window and spotted 3-year-old Landon inside. John caught Landon's attention and asked where his mom Stacy was. Landon replied that she was asleep. John's instincts told him something was off. Stacy wasn't a heavy sleeper and would have woken up from the knocking on the door. John instructed Landon how to open the door, and once inside, he told the boy to wait in the living room while he checked on Stacy. As John entered the kitchen, he was met with a horrific scene. Stacy's body lay lifeless on the floor, surrounded by bloodstains. The same gruesome sight extended into Stacy's bedroom. John instantly dialed 911 and requested assistance. The police thoroughly searched the house to ensure the perpetrator was not concealed inside. It was evident that Stacy's death was not accidental. The woman had succumbed to a fatal neck stab wound. A message on one of the walls caught the detective's attention immediately. The individual who penned it accused Stacy of being unfaithful. The message consisted of only 2 words, cheating, and a second word starting with W. It was particularly heartbreaking that Landon spent most of the day by himself while his mother lay dead. Forensic analysis revealed the boy's bloody footprints next to Stacy's body, indicating he had approached his mother, likely attempting to rouse her. At just 3 years old, he probably didn't comprehend that his mother wasn't simply sleeping. The police collected all possible evidence from the house, including cigarette butts and beer cans, which could provide DNA clues. However, the writing on the wall was the most intriguing piece of evidence for the investigators. They needed to identify who wrote it and why. Given the crime's motive was likely jealousy, and the extreme cruelty suggested a revenge attack, the perpetrator could be someone Stacy knew and trusted. There were no signs of forced entry, implying Stacy had let the killer into her home. The police also found Stacy's car and car keys missing, as well as her phone and the murder weapon. They issued a description of the car to all patrolmen, suspecting the criminal might have used it to flee the scene. Stacy's tragic death was devastating for her loved ones, especially her children, who had to come to terms with never seeing their mother again. Psychologists spoke with Landon to see if he had witnessed anything unusual, but the boy couldn't assist the police. Upon waking, he found his mother on the floor. Thinking she was asleep, he tried to rouse her, but she didn't respond. The prime suspect in this crime could be someone who believed Stacy had been unfaithful to them. Initially, there were 2 main suspects: Stacy's boyfriend, Brent, and her ex-husband, Stephen. Stephen might still have had strong feelings for Stacy, and despite their divorce, he might have been angry that she had moved on to another man. Brent, on the other hand, was known to be jealous, which could have led him to suspect Stacy of cheating. When investigating cases like this, detectives must consider all possible scenarios, no matter how unlikely they may seem at first. They were also looking into the possibility of a secret admirer or unknown romantic interest that even Stacy's closest friends and family might not have been aware of. As a young and attractive doctor's assistant, Stacy would have naturally attracted attention from men. While patrol officers were scouring the streets for Stacy's vehicle, investigators conducted interviews with her family members. Following these conversations, Stacy's boyfriend, Brent, emerged as the prime suspect. Her family and friends were well aware that Brent had a jealous streak and frequently became violent when he suspected Stacy was in contact with others. He had a volatile temper, prone to outbursts over trivial matters, which had led Stacy to sever communication with him on multiple occasions. Given this profile, the detectives pinpointed Brent as a key person of interest and decided to track him down for questioning. Their goal was to determine if he had any involvement in the crime and to confirm his whereabouts at the time of Stacy's death, while also observing his reactions to their inquiries. Brent was still at his country house before heading out, making it easy to track him down. Investigators secured a search warrant and found him in his garage when they arrived. Although he became nervous at the sight of the police, this didn't necessarily imply anything, as many people get anxious when officers show up at their doorstep. The investigators informed Brent of the search warrant for his home and that it was related to the investigation into Stacy Smith's death. Brent appeared to be genuinely shocked by the news and seemed devastated by grief. But the question was this just an act? The investigators aimed to find out when they took him to the police station for further questioning. Brent's behavior during the interrogation only heightened the police's suspicions about him. He admitted that his relationship with Stacy was unstable and marked by frequent arguments. According to Brent, their last altercation occurred on the day before her death. He told investigators that Stacy had cheated on him with one of his friends, which had severely damaged their relationship. Although some time had passed since then, the betrayal still lingered. Brent claimed that on December 27th, he had gone home after they quarreled, but returned to Stacy's house a couple of hours later. They had a calm conversation, and intimacy ensued. He left around 2 a.m., when Stacy's son Landon and her cousin Timothy were asleep in the house. Brent maintained that there were no issues between him and Stacy when he departed, and he was unaware of her death until the police informed him. However, no one could corroborate his alibi, which led investigators to question his story. As a result, they asked Brent to take a polygraph test to gauge his responses. After initial hesitation, Brent agreed to the test, hoping to clear his name. He passed the test without any issues. Initially, the police considered removing him from the list of suspects, but during the polygraph test, they noticed a small red spot on Brent's shirt that resembled dried blood. When questioned, Brent attributed the spot to a minor injury he had sustained the day before, claiming it was his own blood. However, only an expert examination could confirm or refute this statement. To verify Brent's testimony, the detectives decided to interview Stacy's cousin, Timothy, assuming Brent was telling the truth. As the last person to see Stacy alive, Timothy was a crucial witness. However, a major obstacle emerged. Timothy had vanished. Following the news of Stacy's death, the entire family gathered, but Timothy was nowhere to be found. He didn't answer his phone, and his whereabouts remained a mystery. This concerned both the family and the police, particularly given Timothy's history of substance abuse and potential debts. They feared that someone he owed money to might have taken revenge, but something had gone terribly wrong. Another stage has been added to the ongoing investigation. As previously noted, Stephen, Stacy's ex-husband, was one of the initial suspects in the crime. It's possible that Stephen was enraged by Stacy's relationship with Brent, even before their divorce was finalized. Although they were no longer living together, Stacy's actions may have offended Stephen, prompting him to commit the crime and leave a provocative message on the wall. Furthermore, one of Stephen's possible motives could have been related to his children, whom he only saw on weekends, and perhaps he wanted full-time custody. When Stephen arrived at the police station for questioning, he remained calm and composed. denying any involvement in Stacy's death. He claimed he would never harm the mother of his children. According to Stephen, his divorce from Stacy did not lead to animosity between them. In fact, he shared the same suspicion as her family, that Brent was responsible for the crime. Stephen provided an alibi for the night of the crime, which the police quickly verified, ruling him out as a suspect. Meanwhile, investigators searched for Stacy's car, only to discover that the vehicle in question was actually owned by her boss, Dr. William Casto. This raised the possibility of another romantic interest in Stacy's life. Further investigation revealed a romantic relationship between Stacy and Dr. Casto. Colleagues reported that the two were very close, and at some point, Dr. Casto had even given Stacy a car as a gift. This new information added Dr. Casto to the list of potential suspects, with the police considering the possibility that he might have discovered Stacy's relationship with Brent and taken drastic action. With all this in mind, the detective began searching for Dr. Casto, who didn't try to hide and went about his daily routine. After learning about Stacy's death and that the investigators wanted to speak with him, William Casto voluntarily went to the police station. During the interrogation, he admitted to having an intimate relationship with Stacy and giving her the car. According to him, they had been in a consensual relationship for several years before her death, and he would often help her with her problems. Casto denied any involvement in the crime, stating he had no motive to harm Stacy. He was forthcoming with the investigators, providing them with his alibi for the night of the crime. This solid alibi allowed him to be ruled out as a suspect. Now that Casto was no longer a suspect, the police still needed to identify who had written the offensive message in Stacy's house and who she had offended so deeply. Was there another man in her life? The police had to find answers to these questions. Meanwhile, the police used GPS tracking technology to locate Stacy's car, which they found in a deserted parking lot about 5 miles from her house. Investigators believed the vehicle held the key to solving the case. Patrol cars were dispatched to the location, and the car was towed to the police parking lot for forensic examination. Although Stacy's credit cards and personal belongings were found inside, there was no knife linked to the crime or any other evidence. A surprising development emerged in the investigation when the police looked into Timothy's background, Stacy's missing cousin. It turned out that he had a criminal history, including a previous conviction for a sexual offense and theft. According to the charges, Timothy had molested a girl, but he claimed she had lied about her age, and he thought she was above the legal age limit. Timothy served time in prison for this offense and was required to register as a sex offender, but he failed to do so. Timothy Ray Sutherland contacted the police 2 days after Stacy's death, claiming to be staying at a local motel and denying any involvement in her murder. However, he was wanted for arrest due to his failure to register as a sex offender. When the police arrived at the motel, Timothy had escaped, but his girlfriend told them he was hiding in an abandoned trailer on the other side of town. He was arrested on December 30th, 2009, and taken to the police station for questioning. During the interrogation, investigators asked Timothy to corroborate Brent's alibi, which was that he had stayed at Stacy's house with her and her son. Timothy confessed to being at his cousin's house that night, where Brent and Stacy had gotten into a fight. Timothy's cousin accused Brent of killing Stacy, stating that Brent was not a good person and did not care about or respect Stacy. When questioned about why he had left the crime scene, Timothy explained that he was afraid of being arrested due to his unregistered sex offender status. In essence, Timothy accused Brent of Stacy's murder. However, after receiving the lab report, these allegations became less credible. The dried blood on Brent's shirt was found to be his own, not Stacy's. As a result, the police could not find any evidence linking Brent to the crime. Consequently, the circle of suspects narrowed to focus on Timothy and Landon, who were the only ones remaining in the house when Brent left. Clearly, 3-year-old Landon could not have committed this crime and written the offensive message on the wall, which meant Timothy was hiding something. The investigators noticed dried blood stains on Timothy's jeans and sent all his clothes to the lab for analysis. Despite this, he continued to insist that Brent was responsible for Stacy's death. The investigators persisted in questioning him, and eventually, he told the truth. Timothy Sutherland let Brent yell at his cousin, Stacy Smith, and she always forgave him. One night, they had a fight in front of Timothy, and Brent stormed off. But a few hours later, Brent came back, and Stacy forgave him yet again. Timothy was angry about this and led Brent into Stacy's bedroom, where it was clear they were making up. After Brent left, Timothy went to Stacy's bedroom to talk to her. The court documents describe what happened next, without going into unnecessary detail. In 2009, Timothy Sutherland was staying with his cousin, Stacy Smith, in St. Albans, West Virginia. On December 28, 2009, Timothy got into an argument with Stacy in her bedroom. When Stacy called him a junkie, Timothy became enraged at being accused of being a drug addict. He left the bedroom, went to the kitchen to smoke a cigarette, and then returned with a butcher knife. He stabbed Stacy in the neck as she lay on the bed, then fled the scene. Mr. Sutherland took possession of Miss Smith's personal belongings, including her cell phone, credit card, money, and car keys. Additionally, he vandalized a living room wall in the house by writing the word "cheating" on it. According to Timothy, after he injured Stacy, she was able to get out of bed and take a few more steps. At the time, her son was asleep in another room, and her daughter was staying overnight with friends. As Timothy recounted these events to the detectives, he became emotional and appeared genuinely remorseful. He also revealed the location of the murder weapon, stating that he had thrown the knife he used to kill Stacy out of the car window near her house. The police later found the knife at the exact location Timothy specified. Furthermore, laboratory analysis revealed that Timothy's jeans were stained with Stacy's blood. When questioned about the wall writings, he claimed he wanted to frame Stacy's boyfriend, Brent, as the prime suspect in her murder. Given their frequent arguments, he hoped people would assume Brent had killed her out of jealousy. However, Brent suspected there was more to it. He believed Timothy harbored romantic feelings for his cousin and was envious of her. That fateful night, Timothy sat in the living room armchair, overhearing Brent and Stacy's activities in the bedroom. Maybe his jealousy boiled over, causing him to lose control and commit an irreparable act. The police explored the possibility that Timothy might have attempted to coerce Stacy into a romantic encounter after Brent left, but they found no concrete evidence to support this theory. With only 2 people aware of what transpired that night, and one of them deceased, the truth remained elusive. Although Timothy Sutherland initially confessed to the crime during his interrogation, he later claimed innocence at his first court hearing in 2010. Despite this, the authorities had gathered sufficient evidence to secure a conviction. The central issue was whether the jury would believe the prosecutor's claim that the crime was premeditated, or the defense lawyer's argument that Timothy committed the crime in a fit of passion. The series of events leading up to the crime suggested that Timothy was fully aware of his actions. He had an argument with Stacy, left her bedroom, went to the kitchen to smoke a cigarette, and then returned with a knife. On March 18, 2011, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, and Timothy Ray Sutherland was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. 2 years later, in 2013, he attempted to appeal the verdict, but was unsuccessful. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Girish. On November 30, 2003, Shubha, a 27-year-old law student, became engaged to Girish, a software engineer. Her father, a respected lawyer in Bengaluru, had a stellar reputation in the legal community. As his daughter grew older, he worried about her marital prospects. Consequently, he arranged her marriage to Girish, a suitable match with a good job at a prominent multinational company. The two families had known each other for years, which further solidified the union. Confident that Girish would provide a secure future for his daughter, Shuba's father gave his blessing for the engagement, set to take place on November 30th, 2003, with a wedding planned for April 2004. However, 3 days after the engagement, on December 3rd, 2003, Shuba suggested they celebrate with dinner at a restaurant that evening. Girish was thrilled, as this was the first time his fiancée had taken the initiative to plan a night out. Before dinner, Girish took Shuba to his office to introduce her to his colleagues. Afterwards, they headed to a restaurant on Old Airport Road for dinner. After the meal, around 9:30 p.m., Girish and Shuba began their journey home. But on the way, Shuba asked Girish to stop near the airport's landing strip so they could watch the planes take off and land. Girish agreed, parking his scooter to the side, and they stood together, enjoying the planes and each other's company. Suddenly, 3 boys on motorcycles appeared, attacking Girish. Shuba was left alone to face the 3 armed boys, and she desperately shouted for help. Unfortunately, they were alone at that moment, and the 3 boys brutally beat Girish before fleeing. Shuba persisted in shouting for help, and her cries were fortunately heard by a passing car driver who stopped to assist her and Girish. With great effort, both the car owner and Shuba managed to get Girish into their vehicle and drive him to a nearby hospital. The doctor admitted Girish and immediately began his treatment. Meanwhile, Shuba notified both her and Girish's families about the accident, and within a short time, both families arrived at the hospital. Despite the doctor's best efforts throughout the night, they were ultimately unable to save Girish, and on December 4th, they pronounced him deceased. Since this was a clear-cut case of murder, Girish's father rushed to the nearby police station that same day. He recounted to the police how his son and his fiancée had gone out for dinner the previous night, and how, while they were standing at a landing spot near the airport, Girish was attacked, ultimately leading to his death. The police promptly took over the case and began their investigation by questioning Shuba, the sole eyewitness to Girish's murder. Given her distress, she had been inconsolable since learning of Girish's death. The police approached her gently. However, Shuba's account matched the one Girish's father had already provided, prompting the police to launch a thorough probe of both the crime scene and Girish's background. They even explored the possibility that Girish had personal enemies, but their efforts yielded no concrete leads to crack the case. According to reports, the police were unable to find any CCTV footage in the area, which was largely deserted and lacked residential cameras at the time. Consequently, the investigators turned to Girish and Shuba's engagement video as a potential source of leads. Their motive was to investigate whether someone close to Girish might have been involved in his murder, given that only their families were aware of the couple's trip. The investigative officer meticulously examined the engagement video, focusing on the behavior of their families and relatives. However, no suspicious behavior was detected among them. Undeterred, the officer re-watched the video, this time concentrating on Girish and Shuba's neighbors and other guests in attendance. Unfortunately, this effort also yielded no positive results. In the midst of the investigation, the officer took note of Shuba's facial expressions. Unlike what one would expect, she didn't seem happy and was making an effort to keep her distance from Girish. Initially, the officer had focused on the behavior and expressions of Girish and Shuba's relatives, almost neglecting Shuba herself. But after seeing Shuba's unhappy expressions and attempts to distance herself from Girish in a brief clip, he decided to review the entire engagement video again. Upon re-examining the video, the officer observed that during the ring ceremony, Shuba looked visibly sad while sitting with Girish and was consistently trying to create space between them. This struck the investigating officer as unusual, as newly engaged couples are typically ecstatic. Shuba's evident unhappiness raised his suspicions, but he also recognized that relying solely on a video wasn't enough to take action against her. Therefore, he decided to investigate Shuba's call records. Although it was unusual for the police to use this technology in 2003, as it was still relatively new in India at the time, the officer's interest in technology led him to pursue this avenue. In fact, mobile phones were a rarity in India back then, but Shuba's wealthy family had made it possible for her to own one. Upon obtaining her call records, it was revealed that on December 3rd, Shuba had made repeated calls to a single number. The police then traced the number back to a boy named Aaron Verma. The police then delved deeper to uncover who Aaron Verma was and what his connection to Shuba was. They soon discovered that both Aaron and Shuba attended the same college, with Shuba being 2 years his senior. This new information prompted the officer to track their locations on December 3rd. Shuba's location was found near the airport, as she was with Girish. However, when tracing Aaron's location, the police found that he was also near the airport, following Shuba to every location she visited. This heightened the police's suspicion, and they subsequently tracked down Aaron Verma and summoned him to the police station for questioning. When the police questioned Aaron about his whereabouts on December 3rd, he claimed to have been out of town for work. The instant he made this statement, the investigative officer was convinced that Aaron was lying and would never admit the truth if asked directly. So they released him, but secretly tapped his phone beforehand. The officer suspected that Aaron and Shuba might be involved in Girish's death. However, they couldn't present them as guilty in court based solely on their alibis and call records from that day. Therefore, they put Aaron's phone under surveillance, believing that if he was involved in the murder, he would eventually incriminate himself. Upon returning home from the police station, Aaron's first call was to Shuba. Over the phone, Aaron informed Shuba that the police had questioned him about Girish's death. Shuba asked if he had disclosed anything to the police. Aaron reassured her that he had kept quiet and successfully misled the police, telling them he was out of town on December 3rd. When the police heard the recording, their suspicions were fully corroborated, leading to the immediate arrest of Aaron and Shuba. At the station, the police presented them with the call recording, call detail records, and location history. Initially, both attempted to deceive the police, but eventually, Aaron's nerve failed, and he confessed to the police that they had indeed murdered Girish. The unfolding story stunned everyone. The 19-year-old Aaron and 27-year-old Shuba had been secretly involved for the past 2 years. It was astonishing to learn that Aaron, still in his teenage years, was deeply in love with a woman 7 years his senior. Reports suggest that Shuba also desired to marry Aaron, but their dream remained unrealized. Shuba's father discovered their secret relationship and disapproved of Aaron, who was significantly younger than Shuba. As a result, he hastily arranged Shuba's engagement to Girish, which took place on November 30th. However, Shuba was unhappy with this arrangement. Despite Girish being educated and financially stable, Shuba found his simplicity and modest lifestyle unappealing and felt he wasn't a suitable match for her. During the investigation, it emerged that Shuba had confided in her beautician at the time of her engagement, revealing her intention to either flee before the wedding or harm Girish. Coerced into the engagement by her father, Shuba had now devised a plan with Aaron to eliminate Girish. This explained her repeated calls to Aaron, who agreed to carry out her plan. With the help of his cousin Dinesh, Aaron hired a local thug named Vinette. Shuba planned to lure Girish out of the house on December 3rd, pretending to take him out for dinner. On their way back, she would take him to a secluded spot near the airport's landing strip, where it would be easy to carry out the murder. According to this plan, on December 3rd, after dinner, Shuba expressed her desire to watch airplanes take off. He agreed to his fiancée's request, and they proceeded to the landing spot. Throughout their journey, Shuba kept Aaron informed about her location through regular calls and messages. Shortly after, Aaron, Dinesh, and Venkatesa arrived at the flight landing spot. Dinesh and Venkatesa then launched a brutal attack on Girish, striking him on the head with an iron rod. Girish collapsed instantly, bleeding profusely from his head injury and losing consciousness. Once the four were convinced that Girish was on the brink of death, Aaron and his companions fled the scene, abandoning the iron rod in the nearby bushes. After a significant period following Girish's injury, Shubha sought help, and the rest of the story unfolded. Despite this, Girish's killers managed to evade the police for nearly 50 days until Shubha and her accomplices were arrested on January 25, 2004, when the motive behind Girish's murder and the identities of his killers were finally revealed. The news of the incident spread rapidly throughout the state media. The police gathered all the evidence, interviewed witnesses, and prepared their case file, which was then presented in court. Although the case languished in the regular court for a lengthy period, it was eventually transferred to a fast-track court. Even in the fast-track court, the trial continued from 2007 to 2010. In May 2010, the fast-track court sentenced Shubha, Aaron, and their companions to life imprisonment. However, in July 2010, Shubha filed a bail application with the Karnataka High Court, which upheld the lower court's decision and rejected her bail plea. With no other option, Shubha then filed her bail application with the Supreme Court in August 2014, and the Supreme Court granted her bail for a limited period. The investigative officer who cracked this murder case by reviewing a video recording of the incident deserves appreciation. However, if Shubha had mustered the courage to confide in her father that she didn't like Girish and wouldn't be happy with him in her life, perhaps Girish would be alive today. Even if Shubha had shared her concerns with Girish, maybe he could have persuaded her father. The tragic irony of this story is that by the time Girish's killers were sentenced to life imprisonment, Girish's father had already passed away, leaving no one to find closure. With that, the Girish murder case finally comes to a close.